King Louie, Fireman. He always comes to my poker games or something, sits by me, kibitzer. But he says, hey, I met a friend of yours in the Cavaliers, Jack Day. I said, oh, yeah, I work with him, I stand around in the blueprint room. He says, I'm a fireman. He says, oh, you wouldn't know Nicky Marino. He's half lit up. He's thinking, no, Nicky. Everybody knows Nicky Marino.
Everybody does know Nicky Marino. And as it turns out, Nicky seems to know just about everyone else. Nick is today 92 years old, born in 1928. In fact, the number 8 figures prominently in his life, including his birth date.
8/8/28, 8 kid in the family, married 1958. And for a while, my wife walked away. She's doing something with the Christmas takedowns. But she'd say he's also an 8-ball.
Nick's parents were born in Croatia, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The family name was originally Marinov, with a V, but it was dropped when they came to America for a very practical reason.
Guess what? My dad chopped off with a V on the end. That was the real thing. Marinov, the Navy guy, used the V. The rest of the family, we all Marino. He cut it off. He had all the Dagos had the big jobs in the Depression and in New York. The Marino name went a little further, in the job scoop.
Nick grew up at 3039 East 96th Street on the southeast side of Chicago, almost near the Indiana border. There was a large slag pile in the neighborhood, created by the residue of the large Wisconsin steelworks nearby. But in the winter, it made for an excellent sledding hill.
My oldest brother got some sheet metal from a place that's still active on Torrance Avenue in Chicago, at the end where Ford Motors now, and he got sheet metal and got some rivets, put the holes in it, curved the metal. This is just me and my guys, and we built the homemade toboggan, that's the word. And there was a toboggan family there that had store-bought stuff, and we beat them many times coming down that hill. We made it in my basement, in the Lanny Orphan's basement. And I always got a kick out of that.
Nick attended John L. Marsh Elementary School and remembers an early event that may have influenced his future vocation.
We had a big fire, 1939, grain elevators. Later on, my family, a lot of them were grain during the Depression, loading and unloading barges and that. And this thing, the fire guy next door where we lived got blown up, and I never found him. The grain and the burning. Harry Creel, his name was, German guy. But that fire was bad, and my family, I was just a young kid in a grammar school, look out the windows. Mrs. O'Malley said, "Get away from them windows and get back to your seats. The fireman got a job, and you got a job."
I asked Nick if he remembers where he was on December 7th, 1941.
Oh, absolutely, positively, absolutely. With Carl Dobridge, a friend of mine, he was a big deputy copper. He died. We were playing on the street. The extras come out, But that evening, war, Hawaii, bam, boom, boom, boom. And him and I were wrestling. And it was a nice night, weather-wise. And and I remember a Tribune, and I saved that to Sammy Kaye. Sammy Kaye, the song, the orchestra band, wrote, I think he wrote the words to it in lyrics, and let's remember Pearl Harbor. You remember that song? Well, I'm going to sing it real quick. Let's remember Pearl Harbor as you go to meet the foe. Let's remember Pearl Harbor as we did the Alamo. Let's remember Pearl Harbor and go on to victory.
Nick was rarely referred to by his full name, Nicholas, except at his graduation from grammar school.
I got a little snippy wise sometimes, and Mrs. Leonard says, how would you like to stay in this grade another year? You know, not being promoted. Boom, I wasn't the wise guy then, you know. If she'd have kept me in that grade. So, but they know the situation, you know, all the brothers. When I graduated grammar school, on the stage, now this is 1942, when I graduated, I was about 13 years old, and all the gals were humming and singing. They called me Nicholas. And my diploma, Nicholas Marino. Well, it was Nick Marino. He called it a little fancy, with the principal handed out, and they all started humming. Jolly old St. Nicholas on the stage. And I remember that like it was yesterday.
Nick had 5 older brothers who served in World War II, some in the Pacific and some in Europe. All survived the war. Nick himself was drafted for the Korean War. He was at a tavern in Seattle getting ready to board a troop ship when a friend of his from the neighborhood told him he would not be coming along.
But guess what he did? We got hugs and kisses. We're parting. Amos going back to the YMCA, and Willie Cole's going somewhere else, and I'm going back with the guys back to the camp. And he says, Nicky, he says, I'm not going to be on that troop ship. And you know, I'm listening. He says, I didn't start the war, and I'm not going to fight it. And guess what? My wife worked for an outfit, found out that he got a couple of years in Lavin, worked for that.
Nick remembers the day he set sail for Korea.
I'll tell you what year I went to Korea, 1950, and I'll tell you almost the date. On the troop ship going there with the World Series playoffs, what do you call it? Bobby Thompson had a 3-run homer with 2 outs off of Ralph Branca in a 9th inning, propelled them in the World Series, and they won it. So that's how I know that.
Nick says that his older brothers didn't talk much about their experience in the Second World War. But when he was stationed in Korea, one of his older brothers sent him a letter with some helpful advice.
The guy that fought in Italy, he sent me a few letters to Korea, big brother, and one of the letters was about 5 pages long, and he'd give it, big brother to his small brother, if you dig a foxhole, now this is the kind of stuff he wrote there. And he never at home, never discussed it. If you dig a foxhole, make sure it's not around trees. You'll get a tree burst, it's like shrapnel, and cover it with a piece of metal or wood if you could. And if don't go souvenir hunting, he's seen somebody reaching for a camera or one of them deals, and boom, right in his face. You want to do that? And he says also, when you get orders, when you're marching, trudging along, keep the space. Keep the space. Don't go huddle them close together. He says, I've seen not a platoon, a squad, maybe 9 guys, boom, somebody stepped on a lot of devices are being used right in Afghanistan, all that war. But he's seen things like that.
After his wartime service, Nick came back to Chicago and worked for Standard Oil, before eventually joining the Chicago Fire Department. He started out working at one of the oldest firehouses in the city.
The first one was on 10 East Hubbard. It was the last firehouse that became mechanized. And people would say to me, "Oh, were you there for the horses?" You know, the horses were last in that house. In the apparatus floor, it had it was grooved, like a tile you put on the roof, on the ceilings, but except it was concrete, and it was all ridged, so the horses would slide around. They'd get a grip coming, leaving the firehouse. You know, that was the old firehouse.
While out on a call during one driving rainstorm, Nick found his way onto the pages of the Chicago Daily News.
And I was on Wacker and State in Chicago, and it was raining, deluge. And me and another guy were taking, not a fireman, taking it to 31st in California or get our regular rig. This was a spare rig. And I had my coat over my eyes and barely could see in the rain and driving rain. And somebody called me, Art Rollicky, a fireman. Nicky, you made the page, almost a full page in the Daily News, but it's gone since. And the caption read, "This firefighter and the tiller really could use some warm weather dry clothes because it's soaking wet."
On another occasion, Nick was called on to rescue a woman and her 2 children from a burning building. But it turned out to be a bit more challenging than it should have been.
Well, one of my last good deals I did, I was happy about. I hate to use the word "I." That's a very insignificant, nothing thing. Well, at least still important word "I." But I got that in my wallet. I carried around, and we had a fire on Jeffrey Avenue, not Jeffrey, but right around by the lake, close to the lake. My fire truck 49, and pulled up, and there was black smoke coming out the back and out of the windows. 3 floors up there. That's a long ways up. Threw the ladder up. Run up that ladder. I says to her again, the talk and stuff. You can't do a lot of talking, but I want you to do this. Just turn your body around, your butt facing my face, and grab the beams, not the rungs, the beams, and I'll come back for the kids. She turned around and put her hand on the beams and just let go, and come right in my face. I almost got knocked down 40 feet, and she almost killed me and her. But I got a nice little thing for that.
Nick remembers fighting a fire at a department store in his neighborhood and coming across an unexpected spectator.
We got that fire. Fire was bad. It had smoke ejectors, light wagons during the day. It was a bad fire. Cave's department store, where my mom bought our clothing for the communion and everything else. But it was bad fire. Water, ice and water and everything. And we're getting a little break, coffee break, and I'm walking with my hippers and I skidding around, soaking wet, and a captain who's roped off with the wooden horse and all that. My daughter and my sister-in-law. Hi, Dad! She's yelling. So I see her, I can't even bend down with my hippers or frozen. I give her a little smooch, crunch, crunch. But the captain says, he stopped for a moment. He says to my little daughter and my sister, "You see what your dad got to do to put the pork chops on the table?"
As Nick gained more experience fighting fires, he was more than willing to impart his wisdom on the younger recruits.
They had a fire in Hammond, in an empty warehouse or something, and they went in without masks, and they're going in and got lost. 6 years, they got killed, died. Well, first of all, I tell any young fireman or something, listen, you didn't start the fire. If lives are at stake, we go to the distance, we go to mileage. But if it's an empty warehouse, I don't want to be in the obituaries. You got killed in an empty warehouse. These Hammond firemen, they're I don't know. Somebody says they were kind of joking around. Yeah, well, they got lost, and it's not too nice to get lost in the smoke. Or tell us, here's how to find your way out. Road hose. If you got the hose, black smoke, follow the hose back where it come in. That's where you want to go out. You just keep following that hose. Little tips that it's not in the books, but that's good stuff to pass on to guys.
Nick has an uncanny ability to remember people, and of course, they remember him. Coming back from Korea on a troop transport ship, Nick had met a fellow Chicagoan, Chester Dombrowski. They lost touch when they got back to the States, but some years later, Nick ran into him again.
Dearborn Street, and I'm on a bus going to Holy Name Cathedral for Mass on a Sunday. Somebody usually drives outside. No one was driving that Sunday. I took the IC, and I happened to be on the bus one time in 15 years or something. And guess who was driving the bus? Chester Dombrowski. I got on the bus, and I took a uniform and stepped on. Not too many people. Sunday morning, it was 7 o'clock, and I sat down near the front. I'm going to get off right over the river, and I'm going to get off and go walk the whole time. He turns around and he goes, Nicky Marino. And I look at him, the driver, he's driving and looking. I said, Chester Dombrowski. How do you like that story?
Sports play a big part in Nick's life. He was, and still is, an avid tennis player. And of course, he roots for the Bears, the White Sox, and Notre Dame basketball and football. He remembers going to the Bears games back when they played at Comiskey Park.
Oh, it was years ago, Comiskey Park or something. Mike Dang from 97th in Commercial. I was president of the club, sports club. We all had a little pint of Canadian Club for their root. I think it was a half pint. And we had to go into the games. That was a long time ago. And before we got to Columbus Square, there was a square there in our neighborhood. The bottles were all empty. Everybody drank them.
Being a firefighter allowed for part-time work outside the firehouse, and at various times Nick worked in construction or other odd jobs. One of his friends in the fire department spent his time off as a college basketball referee and got to officiate some notable games.
My friend Richie Weiler was a fireman. Richie blew the whistle in college games in basketball. He was that good. Part-time job, blowing the whistle. He had the game when, started his 88-game win streak. UCLA, Wooden, remember John Wooden? He was the coach. Okay, he started out that 88-game streak in South Bend by beating Notre Dame. That game propelled into 88. Richie Weiler had that game.
That's
88
amazing.
games later, Richie Weiler, who's a fireman like me, and he's blown the whistle in UCLA and stopped John Wooden's 88-game streak. What do you think of that?
Nick's wife, Barbara, describes Nick these days as a professional mourner. Being 92 years old, he unfortunately knows many people who have passed away. A friend recently challenged him to pick up the local paper to see if he knew anyone in the obituaries.
Where I played tennis in Maryville, right, in the joint, and Jesse Cruz sitting at a table, and somebody says, pick up the Times, the Heyman Times, where you're going to know somebody in there. Wakes, guess what? 3 people in there. Marie Barczyk, Arnold Smittle, and Chester Cabay. 3 people that I got to go all 3 weeks. What do you call it? Says, pick the paper, you'll know somebody. That particular day and that morning, I knew 3 people in the Heyman Times.
Nick attends Mass at Holy Name Cathedral, presided by the Archbishop of Chicago, Cardinal Blaise Paul Kupic, a fellow Croatian. In a recent homily, Cardinal Kupic referred to an old Croatian expression that Nick's mother was also fond of, one that is especially relevant for today.
He says about Nebojse. His mother always preached to him, Nebojse. Nebojse means don't be afraid of anything or anywhere. And my ma used to use that phrase too. Nebojse. Don't be afraid of anything.
Nick admits that he's a talker, but many of those who know him best wouldn't have it any other way.
I talk, and somebody will say in a crowd, saying, fire party. Oh, Nicky got you cornered, huh? They'd hesitate, and whoever was there would say, we love Nicky's stories. What do you think of that?